Okay, this is exciting for me. I wanted to switch things up from moving away from just posting photos on Instagram to giving more of a backstory to the images, because I think there's so much that's missing when you just take an image, post on Instagram with a little caption trying to explain things. So I went from that to coming up with the idea of posting a kind of BTS video, a swipe over on my Instagram to watch a 1-minute video kind of on the background and story, a bit about the camera gear, maybe some settings, maybe how I edited it, but then I kind of felt restricted on that. So now that's why we're here on YouTube. And this is exciting because I kind of been wanting to get into YouTube a little bit over the past couple years, but I never had a good excuse or good plan for it. I didn't want to get into it just for the purpose of being on YouTube. I wanted to bring something new, something that people haven't seen before a little bit, but also I kind of figured like, well, I don't want to do product reviews because I don't really know too much about the technical side of things, but I did want to share a bit more of the stories of these photos that I share on Instagram. So that's why we're here. And what you've seen, I did 8 videos on Instagram before with a swipe over video, but I wanted to go into deeper into maybe the gear, because I did get a lot of questions, and I would love just to be able to be like, hey, check out this video on it, it answers your question, and even get a bit more into the editing side on how I edit the photos, because I know a lot of people like that, and I like when other people share that kind of information too. So I think this is going to be great. So this image was shot in Banff in 2016. Now that I'm going and bringing up these raw files, I'm realizing how long ago this was, but this trip was pretty crazy. One of the first trips I took with Ben, and we went to Banff in his van that he used for construction work prior to getting into photography. Works great, you just lay a mattress down in the back. It even had a industrial roof rack that I think was meant for ladders, but we got this, we had a canoe with us as well, as you can see in the image. So this photo was shot on a morning at Moraine Lake, and it had just freshly snowfalled the night before, so everything was kind of dusted in snow without the lake being frozen, because the lake does freeze for a long, probably majority of the year, and the road closes and you can't access it unless you want to walk 16 kilometers or 10 miles or whatever to this lake. So to have the lake not frozen, to get reflections and to see the blue of the water, but with that dusting of snow for winter, just made such a cool combination for photos and for video. So we did shoot a pretty crazy video here. As you can see, I'll display it somewhere on the screen. It's nice not having just like the 4x5, what is it, 5x8? I don't even know. Whatever ratio of Instagram, 1080 by 1350, to have this kind of space so I can play things and reference stuff in this video as well. I'm actually liking this. So in this image, yeah, like I said, me and Ben went to Banff. So I want to get into a bit about the backstory. So we've traveled lots beforehand, and this was probably one of those trips for me and Ben that kind of we got so many great images and had such a good time that like this is a career that we want to pursue full time. I'm not sure if we were both full time at the time. I think we're still working other jobs, but this was something special, and to get it in that time of year, I think it's late fall, was actually, I'll tell you because I can, because we have time on YouTube. So this photo, let's see here, October 8th, so 12 days before my birthday. So late fall, right before things start to freeze over and get super cold. And we went to Moraine Lake that morning to shoot this nice freshly fallen snow. So this photo specifically, before I get into editing it, I want to go over the camera system I was using at the time, because it says it here. So I was using an A7S II, which is a kind of older Sony camera, works great for low light, and I think works great for video, and in general it works great. It's only 12 megapixel, which seems kind of small, like my phone, the iPhone X is 12 megapixel. So, but it does the work, it does the job for most things, for video and for photos on social media. You can get cameras with bigger megapixels. Most cameras are at least 24, 25 megapixels, like my current A7S, no, A7 III, not A7S III yet. A7 III is 25 megapixels, which is a good middle ground, and then you get up into the 40, 50 medium format type resolutions, but it works pretty well for social media. And I did crop quite a bit into this image, as you can see when I start the editing process. So let's not prolong this anymore. Let's get into more on the edit. So I'm going to screen record and we'll get into it. So generally I pick my photo that I want to edit and I resize it to fit for Instagram right off the bat. So it's a 4x5, 8x10. And I think the horizon line is a bit tweaked there, so I'll go with that. There's a bit of negative space up in the clouds here and a bit down in the water, so I'll probably crop in just a bit more here and kind of center it a bit more. I kind of want to fill up the frame with this mountain, so I am cropping in heavily on a 12 megapixel camera, which still works out. So there we go, I have my crop. I can see that the canoe is pretty centered on these mountains. The reflection is almost perfect, it's great. And I have a bit of distraction, so you can see this rock sticking out of the water here. I just cut off this rock here, and there's a couple things going on here which I'll clean up a bit in Photoshop. So generally what I'll do is I like editing snow has been a journey for me, figuring out what I like, but I generally go on the cool side. So I'll probably go down to about here, but I do like when certain aspects, maybe some rocks or wood in general, or this rock part that isn't covered in snow has some warmth to it, color-wise, because then you get a bit of a contrast rather than the whole frame being super blue. So what works well for that is split toning, so you can kind of go after either highlights or shadows and give a bit of warmth to those. So what I'll do here is, because this is kind of a shadowy area, the rocks are shadowy, I'll give this a bit of warmth and see what happens here. So probably go with this nice light orange. Okay, a bit aggressive because we do have a lot of shadows, so I'll dial this back a bit, maybe to 14%, and then we'll just give a bit more contrast in the highlights with some blues on the snow. So right there you can already see the really highlighted parts, which is generally the snow, will get a bit of a bluer tone, and then the shadows will give even a bit more red now that we have more blue. Perfect. And exposure wise, you can see from the histogram up here that this triangle means, I think it means clipping, which means when you're, yeah, show highlight clipping. So nothing's clipped yet. Let's see how much we can bring it up until something clips. So I'm slowly raising it up, and then, okay, apparently that's when it clips, but that's way too bright for my liking, so I'm going to dial this back down. I think this right here is a good exposure. And you can see, because you can set your background to whatever, like you can set it background to dark gray if you wanted, or black. I like to keep it at white, because then I can see there's a difference between pure white and my background, so I kind of can see that it's not clipping, even though it does look pretty white because it is bright snow. So here, there's a bunch of good detail in the water with the mountain, and up here, I think I generally add a bit more detail through clarity and a bit of contrast. Not too much, just a little bit. And then I kind of have a workflow when I'm posting on Instagram to tweak things, because going from a computer screen to an iPhone screen, a lot of things change, colors change a bit, so I do a bit of tweaking, which I'll include in this video because we can go as long as we want. So basically that's kind of what we'll do here. Maybe dial back the highlights just a little bit, maybe bump the shadows a bit. I noticed that down in the water the shadows are much more darker, not too much actually, but I'm going to give it a bit of a graduated filter here just to bump up the shadows here a little bit. And then I think I want to keep this area pretty dark, just to keep the kind of focus in on the center in the canoe there. So I'll probably add a second one here where I'll drop the exposure instead of increasing it. And then what you can do in general too, if you like to have your subject kind of honed in and make people focus on that, you can just add a vignette, which we can add a little bit. We don't want to darken too much of these clouds up here in the corner, so that we'll just do -2, which you can dial in. You can probably hear my laptop trying to struggle through this edit. You can imagine what editing 4K video, what editing this video is going to be like in 10 minutes. This is a 2015 MacBook Pro with like 8 gigabytes RAM, so due for an upgrade eventually. So that's pretty much, I like these colors so far. I kind of like the image. I like the canoe centered in the image. So now to get rid of these distractions, like this rock with the peak sticking out of the water and this discolored rock part here and these rocks on the beach, you can try to get rid of them with this spot removal tool in Lightroom, but I do like Photoshop for that. So what I do is I go Photo, Edit in, Photoshop. So while Photoshop loads, okay, just loaded, I want to give you a look at what I'm using to record this. So using the FS5 and hooked up to a boom pole with a Rode NTG2. And the reason why I have this huge elaborate setup is because I used to use my camera and this lav mic, but this lav mic recently broke. So that's why it's been so long since I posted a video. But it gave me a good amount of time to think about, do I want to be posting on Instagram at a minute long, or do I want to be able to post and talk about stuff more in depth? So here we are in Photoshop. So pretty simple stuff I do in here. I go and I use this spot healing brush tool, which just works miracles somehow. So say this edge right here, I just want to get rid of that. Boom, done. Get rid of this. Boom, done. Get rid of this distracting different color. And you can go through and be as picky as you want with different parts of the image that you think are distracting. I'll go into other tools I use once I use them to edit images, like dodging and burning, super handy tool. And even sometimes I use the blur tool here. And generally have the strength of like 40%. But sometimes you can take away from the image with having too much detail. So sometimes when there is parts of the image that don't necessarily need the detail, you can take that away with the blur tool here. And then maybe I'll just do a swipe on the edge here. Once in the water with the reflection, and then maybe once on this side. Just to take some detail away from the edge so you do focus on the canoe in the middle. And one thing I'll do actually is I do want this canoe a bit brighter. So I can use the dodge tool, which allows you to brighten, or when you use the burn tool, darken certain parts, certain exposures of the image. So right now I have the dodge tool on 8%, which is pretty small. I want to focus on highlights because I am going to be focusing on the canoe. I want this canoe to be as bright as the surrounding snow. So I'll generally make it kind of the same size, and I'll just do a couple runs here. So now I'm going to export it. I might as well share my export settings on this one. Actually, wait, that'll make the video quite long. So export settings will be in the next one, because that is a whole nother thing that I've went through for the past 3 years trying to make things look sharp on Instagram. So that's it for today. Hope you enjoyed this video. I don't know how long this is, but it's definitely longer than a minute. Feels good. I'll see you in the next one.